This is Tennessee Talks with United States Congressman Tim Burchett.
Hello, I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and welcome back to another episode of Tennessee Talks. Today I'm joined by Ed Rottmann, the CEO of Chroma Energy Group, which is a solar energy company based here in East Tennessee. Ed, I want to thank you for joining me here on Tennessee Talks. It's great to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about your journey that finally led you to launch Chroma. Am I saying it right, Chroma?
Yeah, that's perfect, exactly. So, well, first off, thank you for having me in, Congressman Burchett. It's a pleasure.
Call me Tim. We're good.
Sure, I'll do my best. And so, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here, and I look forward to talking with you about it. So, the journey. Where to start? So, graduated from University of Kentucky, the highest accomplishment anybody from the South could have. And so I remember talking to my dad about, well, what am I supposed to do now? He said, well, get a job. And I said, okay, that makes sense. Anything else? And he said, no, go and get a job. So I had a business degree, received an offer to go work in Los Angeles for a tech company, and packed up everything I owned in the back of a little two-door Chevy Blazer and drove out to LA. And then
it's not La Follette, but Los Angeles.
Correct. Yeah, a little further away, exactly. So Los Angeles, and worked for a tech company, and that was great. Knew that was not long term. Came back east for graduate school, and so went to Vanderbilt. Met my wife there. And
now Vanderbilt, it's a 2-year school, right? Trade school?
I think so, yeah. Something. Okay. It was a 2-year degree, but yeah. So I got my MBA from there, and met my wife, and then we went and worked in Huntsville, Alabama, and I worked for the Missile Defense Agency for a couple years, and then my father-in-law came and asked us if we would be interested in getting involved in the family business. So it's a Caterpillar dealer, Stowers Machinery, and so 10 years ago,
bought an IT-18 from your father-in-law, $72,500, most money I'd ever had, best investment I ever had. I was in the mulch business, and it was when they went on strike, and it was one that was built by the engineers, oddly enough.
Oh yeah?
Well-built machine, okay. And then I treated it like a rented mule, sold it, and when I got out of that business, I sold it and did very well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're great. Caterpillar is top notch, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it really is. Thank you for that. And yes, I've heard that story, and it learned a lot. So and that brought me and my wife and my family to Knoxville. So I've been here 11 years, rotated around the company, learned a lot about internal combustion engines. 3 kids, correct, right. Exactly. So Natalie, 9, Gabe, 7, and Owen is 4, and really rotated around the company, learned a lot about a lot of different industries, learned a lot of leadership from my father-in-law, and loved working with my wife and him. And one of the areas we were trying to grow at Stowers, we've been selling bulldozers and excavators for a long time, 63 years. And so there was a business that I started focusing on, and that was the power systems division, and that was generators. And so we were meeting with utility companies and really had a lot of discussions about backup power and resiliency. And through those discussions, it was very interesting. I realized what an issue, and I don't want to say problem, but just the grid, the capacity, and how many companies and how many individuals were looking for backup power. And then kind of on a geopolitical scale, you hear about the things going on in Ukraine and Russia, and energy independence is becoming such a bigger thing. And so through that exposure at Stowers, I just really kind of fell in love with the energy sector. I think it's going to be a huge deal for the next 20 years, and renewable energy and solar is kind of where my heart and where my passion is. So
we're always going to need it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not gonna reduce the amount of importance.
Yeah, I've always followed solar for quite some time, and I've heard that there's really been no major breakthroughs probably in the last 20 or 30 years. Is that fairly accurate? Is it pretty much the same technology it once was, but I'm sure they're pumping so much into it now. I would always expect it to be more efficient the more it's advanced.
And that's exactly right. So yes and no. So everything it's actually been a little bit more efficient, and the components are a little bit better, but that's also a good thing in regards to it's been around, it's proven, people are really starting to understand some of the financial and economic return on investment components of it. And so it's been around and it's proven, that's essentially right.
What are some of the ideal circumstances for somebody to use solar energy to power maybe their home or their business? And is it only possible for areas that have a lot of sunlight?
And so, at Chroma, we really focus.
How'd you get the name Chroma?
So, that's an interesting story. So, Chroma is it is the measure of color, the saturation of a color. It can be any color. And so one of the ways they measure the sun intensity is through the color and how deep some of the color saturations are. And I didn't know what to name the new company. And I was actually sitting there at night when I had a few names. I was reading a book to my kids, and kind of just one of those kind of coincidental things that the word Chroma jumped out. A character in the book was named Chroma. It's one of my favorite books. It's called The Phantom Toll Booth, and so it just connected. And I'm one of those people who I go with coincidences.
Right on. Yeah, I dig that. Yeah. I don't believe much in coincidence, so that's a good thing. Well, we got back to the circumstances that someone to use solar energy to power their home or business.
Absolutely. So basically, we really focus on the economics of solar, and almost every place is going to have sun. So there are some situations where it's going to be better than others. We look at usage profiles. So anyone who needs a lot of electricity during the day, clearly that's a good fit. Utility companies, businesses. And then when you start attaching storage to it, it makes the usage a lot broader. But yeah, so currently we kind of look at the usage profiles. It really works for companies, for neighborhoods, for utility companies that use a lot of solar during the day. And then when you attach it with some type of storage,
batteries. What Tesla batteries? I know are one of them. Is there somebody that produces something better than the Tesla battery, or is there a lot more than that out there?
So Tesla Powerwall is still definitely a good option. I think a lot of the innovation that's actually currently taking place is with that space. And so as you mentioned, solar, it really is.
You got to have the batteries because at night you got to be able to power.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And whether we shift away from lithium ion to some different battery sources is kind of the main discussion. But no, Tesla's a good manufacturer, and Caterpillar actually manufactures batteries as well. Most people don't know that.
As my buddy Teddy Phillips says, Phillips and Jordan, he says, until we get a solar powered bulldozer, I'm going to stick with diesel.
I get that. I don't think that's really that far away either. There's already discussions about that, and really, it's crazy to think. I think how close that really is.
That would be the game changer right there. My big problem with the batteries, it doesn't have to do with this, but the automobiles. I'm a motorhead. I like internal combustion. I collect old motorcycles and cars, and I work on all my stuff, tractors, diesel, and everything else. But is the time it takes to charge a battery. To me, that's in an automobile, when you're talking 5 or 6 hours on the side of the road somewhere, that's a long time. And I would hope at some point the technology is somewhere along the lines of, I always use this as an example, propane tanks. You just pull up with an empty propane tank, take it, they give you a full one, then you're on the road.
Yeah.
And the standardization too is another thing. That didn't have anything to do with yours, so you get that for free. You have 6 different types of outlets or plugs, and every company has their own type of plug, and there's not a generic adapter yet. I'm sure there'll be one eventually when it all gets condensed. But anyway, TVA recently announced their plan to double solar energy capacity. What does that mean for the future of the grid?
Well, I think that's fantastic. I think anytime you're adding clean, reliable, sustainable energy to the grid, that's a great thing. And so I think it will really help the Valley from an economic development perspective. I think being able to recruit companies here, a lot of the big companies over the last 10 years that have come here, Facebook, that was kind of a requirement. They wanted 200 megs of solar energy. Ford in the Blue Oval City, the exact same thing. So I think being able to double what we have, and then it's also going to add a bunch of really high-paying jobs for the Valley, and I think that is going to be one of the hurdles that I think we have to really get over as a state, and I think we need to invest in workforce development. And so, Governor Lee just passed a $3.3 billion infrastructure bill, and that's something that we need, and that's a wonderful thing. But really, what that industry, what the energy industry, the main issue is going to be workforce development with those things. So I think that, but it's a great thing. Anytime you're adding capacity these days, especially renewable energy, it's a good thing.
Tell me about current projects you've got that you can talk about. I know you have things in the works and things like that, but what can you talk about that's going on in our area that you're doing at Chroma?
So we have 2 projects currently with Duke Energy down in Georgia. Those are about 3 megawatts. And
privately owned, not privately, publicly owned energy, correct, Duke?
Private company, and so they have a private development company, which it's called REC. That's who we are contracting with. That's our customer, exactly. And so we are about to wrap up 3 megawatts of electricity down there sometime in the next month. We have a rooftop job we're about to start in Raleigh. So we've worked around the Southeast, and I think with that TVA development that you just mentioned, I think we're really going to see, we're already seeing some momentum in this area. A company called Denso just broke ground. You were out there.
I was out there for the deal. That's exciting. I was the head guy at Denso. That was pretty cool, actually. What's it going to do for our economy, especially the people here in East Tennessee? What do you see? I like the fact that we're not dependent on foreign energy sources, and I think that plays into it, of course. But jobs, clean energy, what will it all do for East Tennessee and for the economy?
Sure. So I look at it as an overall fantastic, great thing for East Tennessee, for every stakeholder. And I think, what Chroma focuses on doing is really looking at every stakeholder in society and making sure that the solar assets that we install provide value for every stakeholder. And so that can be TVA from a generation perspective, utility companies from distribution, end users, people. And so specifically, I think when you're looking at what it's going to do for people in Tennessee, you really have to focus on companies that are coming here. I really believe the type of companies we want in Tennessee, that's going to almost be a prerequisite for them to come here. And then the other thing is it's really going to provide high-paying jobs. And so that's what it's going to do for the communities and for the people. And then any time that you can add resiliency, I think we know that resiliency is going to be a big thing, and I think people want additional capacity on the grid, and solar, a clean option. Right now, if you want carbon-free electricity, solar is the main option that you're going to have. And so I look at it as...
And off the grid, too, and that's you're relying, TVA during the big freeze this year, we lost everything. We lost our power, and then we lost, pipes and everything else. I know I did personally. And I raised hell with TVA about it, but it's a real problem. And I think that allows you to, if you had the option, you could switch over and do your thing. So,
exactly.
And of course, big businesses and stuff, they lose. You don't just turn the switch back on. Some of these places it cost them millions and millions of dollars, and that would have been an easy insurance policy if they were at the point where they could do that.
Without a doubt, and so you can pair solar with other forms of backup and create microgrids. But I think the important thing with the energy transition is that I do believe it's going to be led by the private sector. I mean, there's definitely been some bills introduced that are really going to help, renewable energy. But I think when you look at who is driving it and who is going to want it, it's going to be companies like Ford, it's going to be companies like Denso, and it has to be economically viable. I think that's the main thing.
I agree. This is the part of the show that I hate the most, that everybody likes, that's on here. You get to ask me anything. Of course, if I don't like what you said, we just edit it out, and this part never happened. Then I cut to the end scene.
Okay, all right. So you are part of the Conservative Climate Caucus, and so I would like to actually take that question you asked and I want to hear your thoughts. And so, what do you think about TVA's announcement last week at the board of directors meeting to add 6,000 megawatts of solar electricity?
Well, I'm not a big fan of TVA. I have a lot of issues with TVA, and that remains to be seen. That probably won't be resolved by you and I talking about it. But anything like that is encouraging. But I worry about. We have technology that could be. I think we need to continue. I think solar is a part of it, but we have coal in the ground, we have oil in the ground, we have natural gas in the ground, and we have the technology to get that out in an environmentally safe and sound manner. And I hope we're not cutting our nose off to spite our face, because I think it all fits in as a piece of the pie. Solar. Hydroelectric, nuclear, of course, is with the small nuclear reactors that will eventually come on if we don't regulate ourselves to death.
Absolutely.
And because there's not enough hillsides and not enough flat spots for solar, for it to be everything to run off solar, and I get that, but I hope that's part of our deal, because I'm a big fan of I want to get out of bed with the Middle East. I don't want anything to do with them. I'd say, in all sincerity, they can eat their sand. Let's get it all here. And I don't want to be dependent on anybody, because they're only our friends until the check clears, and then they're moving on to the next one. So, I'll end it there before I create an international incident. But anyway, I thank you, Ed, and I thank you for joining me here today. I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate any time an entrepreneur sets out on their own on something like that. That's really cool, and I dig that very much, because this country was built on the backs of folks like yourself that roll the dice, and we're all and this country was built by risk takers. It wasn't founded by a bunch of people that are afraid of their own shadow. They stepped out into the unknown and went after it, and I dig that. So thank you so much for being on the show, brother.
Well, thank you, Congressman Burchett. I really appreciate that, and I enjoyed this. This was a good discussion.
And quit calling me Congressman. It's just Tim. That's what the custodians in D.C. call me, Tim. They do all the work. I told them, I said, I've been here 5 years. I said, we hadn't hit a lick since I've been here. Congress hasn't. I said, y'all still working. But anyway, I appreciate everybody joining us today for another episode of Tennessee Talks, and I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and thank y'all so much for sending me here. We'll see you again very shortly.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tennessee Talks. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Keep up with Congressman Burchett by following Rep. Tim Burchett on Twitter and Instagram, and Congressman Tim Burchett on Facebook and YouTube.